Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 5 of Gotham Knights. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's start off with the Harvey side of things. Obviously, Harvey's starting to get concerned and worried that there might be something going on, so he talks to a psychiatrist friend of his, and he tried to make it seem like, hey, I'm talking about a criminal who I believe might kind of have a condition that we ultimately find out that, identity dysmorphia? I guess maybe that, I don't know if that's in the same realm. It's probably like, it's not exactly, but maybe it's in the same family. It's kind of like a dissociative personality disorder. It's in that realm, but it's not exactly the same thing. Turns out the psychiatrist kind of saw through it and knew Harvey was talking about himself. Turns out his father has this condition, which I was like, interesting. Once again, I'm not well versed in the comics, so I've never really heard anything, at least anything that's Batman related I've ever watched that's ever really leaned into Harvey's, like his condition being a hereditary thing, which I was like, oh, that's fascinating, especially because timing wise, because who knows if they'll fully lean into it or not, but the Batman, Matt Reeves' Batman movie, did set up and imply that Martha Wayne was locked up in Arkham Asylum at one point in time, that she had some mental illness, and that maybe what Bruce has is just a hereditary mental illness that just happened, circumstances and tragedies help trigger that in him, especially because the psychiatrist was telling Harvey, hey, if you had your father's condition, it would have reared its ugly head much earlier in life. Now, I'm curious, will there be events throughout the course of this story that does trigger it, or will it be some because we ultimately find out Harvey isn't kind of going through the same condition he went through, with his father went through. It's that someone is hypnotizing him. So you're like, okay, so it is a combination of because even the psychiatrist is like, okay, what's more likely that basically you had some homicidal alter ego, which I was like, which is funny too, because the opening of the episode had, they're leaning into the imagery so much of there was a newspaper that was burning and it started burning like half of Harvey's face, and I was like, hey, when are we getting to burn face? We probably won't, but like I said, you're just waiting for it. You're like, once again, I referenced it previously, I'm going to reference it again. It's just like the Telltale Batman game. So when we get into burn face, sadly, it's kind of jacked up. It's like, it's in his future, because super best friends back in the day, they played the Telltale games, and they were like making jokes about, let's do everything we can to not get to burn face type of situation, trying to keep acid off your face, because it's typically acid that ends up burning his face. Because it was an explosion in The Dark Knight, if I remember correctly. Obviously, I always remember the Heath Ledger Joker of it all, but I never fully remember the Two-Face storyline in that, or the Harvey Dent storyline of that. But either way, tangents and all that aside. So I thought that was so interesting, but it's also like, we know his he does have a homicidal alter ego, which is interesting because it's not even really fully an alter ego, because it's kind of all him, both dual sides of himself. Once again, that's the conundrum that is Harvey Dent, that is Two-Face. Once again, it's more one person than technically two people. I think some things lean into the two being kind of separate, whereas a lot of stuff, like kind of Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I'm sure that's the direct parallel for Two-Face, but it's like all happening at once, and they just kind of find some kind of synergy between in that existence, whereas like some stuff you still have the Harvey and the Two-Face kind of like battling it out. Either way, it was really heartbreaking there's sadly a lot of abuse stuff that kind of goes down in this universe. Obviously we have Harper and Cullen, their whole situation with their dad being abusive. Turns out Harvey's dad was abusive, but it seems like his was like, hey, it was like, my dad could be like violent and beat me just for spilling a drink on my shirt, or just for no reason at all. And then look at me wondering like, oh, where'd you get that bruise? What happened to you? And cuddle me. And he loved me and I loved him. But I know that monster that was there was real too. And he was scared that that's what's happening to him. It's like all this missing time. It's like, well, we now know he's being hypnotized. Now, whether this is a Riddler route, because we did have a little hypnotization in Batwoman, and that was by Enigma, Riddler's daughter. So we don't know if this is going to be like some Riddler stuff. Probably Probably not. I don't know if they'd go down that route or not, but, or maybe it's just the court has some, I mean, because I think the court hypnotizes people too. So I don't know if they have like a hypnotist on the payroll or whether they just straight up just do that thing themselves. Because I started doing, because I'm not well versed enough as like, I know a small decent amount of the Batman Rogues Gallery. So I'm like, I mean, because the people that would probably mess with people's heads, like, obviously I don't know if he'd use hypnotism. He'd go more of the scientific manipulation route. I was thinking like a Hugo Strange, but I'm like, I don't know if he'd be involved in something like that. So that's why I was like, Riddler seems like the most obvious one, but I don't know. There's probably like plenty of others. There are probably villains I'm aware of them, just not thinking about on the more hypnotism front. So, but yeah. His situation ends with him basically hooking up with Rebecca. He was calling her over and over. Now, I don't know whether it's supposed to be like representative of, yes, he has this side of himself, his darker alter ego, the Two-Face side of him, that is like, hey, when they hypnotize him, it's like, you're a little more malleable, or we just have you, it's basically your darker side coming out, doing what you really want, like your conscience is keeping you from doing. So, oh, you want to be with Rebecca, you want to do the tango, you want to do the nasty, but you're trying to be a good person, you're holding yourself back, so his darker side did want to do that. But it also is like, right, we could use this to our advantage. Either he's more malleable and they manipulate him in that regard to like, do what we want you to, but also you can do whatever you want to with your dark half. Or it's just, once, and I thrown this out here last episode, wondering whether or not the court could be gaslighting him, it could all be a gaslight, but it could just be a thing of like, they framed him for Mayor Hill's death, but no, it does seem like he was responsible for it. But, how the court, not unless the court's not involved, not unless the Harvey thing is something else entirely, but, they're the big game in town, they are the main antagonist, so you'd assume they might be connected in some shape or form. But, because like I said, that's the major question on the Harvey front. Is it a situation of this is all manipulation, or is it just more, or in conjunction with, hey, giving into his desires? Because I was like, obviously he wants to be with Rebecca. They have a history, but could it also be is that just to get him close to Rebecca? Like, just to get them close to Lincoln, or what? That seemed more like especially because he's calling so many times. Once again, could be a court thing, but I feel like that was more him than anything else. So we'll ultimately have to wait to see where things kind of go on that front. On the other side of things, we deal with the McKellans. Once again, when it comes to like the more street side of things, like obviously we got it a lot more in Gotham, but the name that comes up the most is Falcone, like once again, just depending on what continuity. Carmine Falcone, God, David Zayas played, I can't remember, was it, because I think the name was mentioned in The Batman, but is it like Monroe, or I forgot what it was. David Zayas played this other big mobster in Gotham. He was kind of like the counterpart to Falcone. So I want to say it was something with an M. Like I said, I'm pretty sure this person's referenced in The Batman. I think they're already dead by the time the Batman happens. But it's another, like, they're typically the only like gangster mobsters I'm aware of street level wise. So like the McKellans, I'd never heard their names before, so I don't know if that's something made specifically for the show, or that is a small enough like grouping gang that is a mob group that's known. We never got to meet her this episode, where we found out that the leader of the group is Dylan's mom. And I'm so curious to see if that storyline's there, but we're not done with that, because I'm sure Dylan's mom is going to come for some revenge because she's out 30 mil. Granted, that 30 mil wasn't her money, it was someone else's, most likely the court's money that they were, the McKellans were laundering. So obviously it's like, right, well, Harper has her connection with the McKellans because she dated Dylan a while back. And so it's like, well, I thought they never leaned into it like they could have. It's probably like all this time you feel like the smarter play, but it would have been the more manipulative play, and who knows if Harper would have been down for it. But I thought the thing was they were going to take advantage of the history, Dylan, and well, at the time they probably would have if they knew ahead of time. But Harper hid the fact is that she was dating the boss's son. So they're like, oh, we knew he was part with the McKellans. We didn't know he was like royalty amongst the McKellans because his mom runs things. So Harper's kind of dodging the topic and stuff like that, but it's actually Turner who wants to use the McKillen situation to their advantage, and it's like, right, we're going to rob mobsters. Even Carrie's like, wow, I can't believe Delia came up with an idea like this. No, actually, it was Turner. She's like, wait, what? Okay, like, you're sounding a lot crazy than because honestly, the craziest crazy there is Delia, but it's like now, because obviously the Cressida betrayal is like, yo, he's dark and brooding now. It's like, oh, you're definitely taking after Bruce in these moments, because he's like, yeah, well, she got so close to us and manipulated us, and you have like Harper kind of looking like, and Stephanie, and I think it was Colin at the time. It might even been Carrie, kind of like, yikes. It's like, yeah, and it's very reckless this episode. Like, yeah, he storms up to one of the guys, knocks him out. I was like, well, what if he called someone on the radio? Well, it's a good thing he didn't. That's why I knocked him out. Yeah, he was definitely in his reckless bag this episode. His you know, I mean, he's got a lot of anger and, you know, once again, taking after, you know, I mean, even though Bruce did everything he could to keep you away from it, the fact of the matter is, when that's kind of a part of you, it's something that's already there, that a terrible situation just brings it to the surface. So whatever this is, it was always in Turner, and I think Bruce saw that and went to do everything he can to mitigate him ever giving into that darkness inside of himself, just like Bruce did. Bruce gave into his darkness and became the Dark Knight. So he didn't want this from Turner. Once again, why he wanted Turner to have nothing to do with like all of this. So, but sadly, it all fell into his lap, his lap in particular, regardless. But yeah, Harper ended up having her confrontation with Dylan, which is interesting because he called her out for the fact is like, right, I didn't really know you, because he's like, oh, you keep using the word friend. I wouldn't use that to describe our relationship. We did a job together and you bailed. Wait, I'm also finding out you have a brother. It's like, oh, so you didn't mention. It's like, did I even know you at all, Harper? And she's apologetic, but for him, it's like, no, you just say sorry, you get what you want, and then you bail. You cut people off, which even Colin later on like says, like, yeah, Dylan was right about that. You need to kind of fix that. Like, you're so busy looking after everyone else, you're not taking time to, you know, live for yourself. And the fact is that you need to find someone who obviously is deserving of you, who is good to you, who is good for you. So, because we find out, well, Colin finds out this episode, the reason why Harper worked with the McKillens, why she got close to Dylan, was because she was getting money to pay for Colin's surgery. And it's like, oh, you told me you stole that from Dad. It's like, Dad never had any money after all the booze and horses. It's like, I said that because I knew you would feel bad, like, because she didn't want Colin to feel bad of like, oh, I did this thing. But it's also, you know, it's representative of who Harper is. It's like, right, Harper, I mean, especially because Harper has to be the one that looks after Colin. It's like, it's my job to be your protector, considering, you know, the situation they grew up in with their dad. So I wonder if their dad's still alive or not. I don't know if maybe it came up and I just don't remember. I wonder will they end up having to cross paths with their dad and kind of confront him? Like, will it be a thing of, oh, he's tried to clean up his act and he's at least pretending to be a better person, or maybe he is a better person, or maybe he actually is dead. Like, I don't remember if they brought that up before. They walked away with the 30 mil, but not for long. I'm curious, because we know Delia and Colin were super happy about the money situation. Harper probably could have taken it or leaving it. Obviously, Carrie made her position clear, like, no, we can't take this money, even though it's like money that's not the McKillens, it's money getting laundered by like them, by the court. It's like, it's still dirty money. And Turner, I wasn't really sure which way he was leaning with that, because part of me was almost like, well, he's like, yeah, the people of Gotham need the money, but also it's like, well, what are we actually supposed to do with it? So they do give it back to the city and start throwing it out the back, which, something you should keep in mind. I think I talked about this recently in something else. If I remember correctly, sadly, picking up money in a situation like, well, no, it's different. This is out of a van, so I don't know if the citizens are going to be an issue, but if money falls out of an armored truck, like from like money that's transporting money from a bank or something like that, if you pick that money up, you could be charged, I believe, that's a legit thing. I think that's, once again, I referenced something from years ago where something like that happened. I think it's only if it's from an armored truck. Just a regular van tossing out money. It's like, who cares about the illicit legal gains of it? It's like, yeah, like you'd have to track, that's 30 million scattered across a city, and you'd have to literally track down every single person. Some of those people are caught on TV, but yeah, you're not probably going to be able to get everyone. Plus, it's like illegal gain, so it's like, what will you do about it? It's like, it wasn't money you were really aware of from the beginning, so it's kind of getting out there in the wind for other people to pick up. Like, there's not much you can do. Delia was like literally having a breakdown because of it. She was like, all the money, and holding on to that last bag. She's like, what are you doing? You are literally throwing out money. And it's like, it's so sad. But yeah, it gave them the cover they needed to get away. So I do love that Delia was the only one that was literally having a nervous breakdown because of it. She was so excited. I mean, it's just like anyone be, once again, even Colin was excited about it, but it's like, hey, we got away. And so he wasn't too hurt about the whole losing all that money. Delia was heartbroken. But it does seem like Delia and Turner are going to get closer, because I brought that up before. I was like, is that going to become a thing? Because if that becomes a thing, that's definitely going to be interesting, because it's almost like I'm also curious. We'll see. I'm curious how we're going to find, like, another pairing I was curious about, because they're at each other's throat, but part of me wondering was like, are we going to get like a, because at first I was like, well, the Harper situation, I'm like, could that might go a Turner route, but I feel like that's more like a Turner and Delia thing. And he's also, there's obviously something between him and Stephanie, but part of me was almost wondering, like, could there end up being like a Stephanie and Harper thing? Just because, I mean, but that's probably most likely, it might not be a thing of like, there's like an intimate thing in that regard, but it might be a thing of they start off with kind of having issues, but there's so much similarities that they might end up becoming besties, adversaries and enemies coming besties. But the Turner and Delia thing, I've thrown that out there like earlier on in the series, being like, if they hooked up, that would be interesting. It's like the son of Batman and the daughter of Joker getting together, and her being kind of a bad influence, or at least making him give into his darker instincts. He doesn't have anyone there to kind of balance him out, which obviously even Bruce has trouble balancing himself out when it came to his dark side. So having and the Joker always being that chaotic element, that nature, versus like Bruce's nature versus the Joker's chaos. We kind of get that a little bit where like Delia's like, kind of let yourself run free. The court isn't playing by the rules, so why'd you choose? So I think going forward, definitely going to be seeing Turner go down a darker route, especially because Delia's kind of giving him the wrong lessons of, well, the only person you can trust is yourself. It's like, well, you have a whole team and a squad that's got your back. The rest of which did have your back when Delia literally was going to go off on her own in episode 2. So let's not forget that. So probably not the best person to take advice from, but in a situation where he's angry and he just wants to just do whatever, not be so adherent to the rules because no one else is playing by the rules. So he's going to definitely lean into listening to Delia more, and I think that's going to cause some massive issues amongst the team, because I do believe he is going to start doing more and more reckless stuff until they're going to have an intervention or something, or until some fallout happens because of his decisions. There's going to be repercussions that other people will have to suffer, not just him. So I see that kind of happening in Turner's future, but we'll ultimately have to wait to see. Another angle to this episode, and these two elements kind of tie together. Speaking of Stephanie, she was giving that speech thing, and it's like a luncheon with all the parents and students, and her mom was there. And at first, she was trying to give her mom just a club soda instead of the alcohol, but then we see her mom drinking later on and popping pills. So I'm sure in her mind, it's like, right, I'm fine. I'm functioning like I'm a functioning addict. She might not even use the word addict. And even if she were, she's like, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not addicted to drugs. I'm just, I need a little something to take off the edge, but I'm good. It's like, but she's not. And we kind of get a little peek into that world for Stephanie, and just the hard thing that she has to kind of balance all that. Especially when her mom said that line of, "You are your father's daughter." It almost felt like there was almost a slight there. So that once again, your dad's a supervillain, so I'm at the very least villain. I don't know if I'd go as far as supervillain, but I am curious, will it be a situation that when it's all said and done, will we find out that there's more to her stuff. I don't know. We don't know how her dad plays a role in all this. Like, maybe he might be kind of a piece of, a big POS behind the scenes, and maybe that might be why. I mean, it's like the people that are kind of seen as like, hey, I'm so friendly, I'm so wholesome, can sometimes, not always, but sometimes be the biggest monsters behind closed doors. So I wonder, could that be applicable in this regard? We'll have to wait and see. But along those lines, we have Carrie balancing school along with her vigilantism. And obviously that kind of comes into conflict this episode when her mom shows up at the luncheon, can't find her, also talks to one of her teachers, and it turns out Carrie's been, slipping in absences because she's been too busy helping out with a Court of Owls situation with the Gotham Knights, which they officially got their titling this episode. But Turner did say this interesting thing of, how is they going to feel when they find out that their heroes are wanted fugitives? So it feels like that might be a storyline element they kind of play with going forward. Once again, the bad guys make the best good guys type of thing. But other than that, circling back, because Stephanie's mom wants to be a little bit more. I mean, I keep saying Stephanie. Carrie's mom wants to be a little bit more involved, and she wants to be there for her daughter because she feels like she's letting her down. But it's like, no, her mom must be in the medical field because she's like, oh, you save lives every day. Yeah, because she's a doctor. So it's like, yeah, you're a doctor, so you save lives every day. So, don't worry about it too much. And it's like, yeah, the one time you thought about just skipping out on it just to help out the squad, your mom shows up and she's got a whole bunch of questions for you. Obviously, you pretended to be asleep by the time she got home, but that's not going away. And in fact, it's going to get much worse. So that work-life balance is something all heroes have to, not just all heroes, just a lot of characters have to find that balance. I mean, a lot of people in general do, but especially on the superhero front. And Bruce had it down pat, but to be fair, a lot of the Bruce Wayne stuff of like, yeah, I did good as Bruce Wayne because I needed to do good as Bruce Wayne, because it's like there's only there's things that Batman can do that Bruce Wayne can't, but there's stuff that Bruce Wayne can do that Batman can't. But that's also that complicated thing because Bruce Wayne was mainly a facade. Once again, Batman is kind of who he really was, whereas Bruce Wayne was the mask and everything. So that's not the best example to kind of like mirror yourself after. And once again, maybe she's kind of taken some of the worst elements from Bruce, his tutelage and everything that she maybe took from the wrong examples. So just kind of like Turner, it's kind of taken from the wrong example with Delia. Maybe she kind of took, I mean, once again, you're super young at this. Like, who knows in this continuity when Bruce ended up becoming Batman. Oh, also, really quickly, since I'm on that topic of like, lore and stuff, we had the Killer Croc. Could have sworn I said Killer Croc there. If I didn't, it definitely sounded like I did. Killer Croc name drop. So it's like, okay, once again, just feeling out that roster a little bit more. It's like, because it's like, oh, this guy, could he be a vampire? It's like, no, vampires don't exist, which I'm like, does Batman face off against any vampires? I mean, I don't know if Man-Bat technically counts as a vampire or not, which we also don't know if Man-Bat exists in this continuity, but we don't, once again, the full roster. But it's like, okay, we've definitely dealt with other things than just regular villains and stuff, like the more normal villains, but we've dealt with the more science fictional side, at least with, I think, Killer Croc Circumstances is science fictional. But yeah, so it's like, once again, my theory was like, is this Lazarus Pit related? But once again, I'm like, can the Lazarus Pit resurrect? Can it like heal people? Like, I know it could bring you back to life, but like it can't give you like the ability to kind of like come back over and over again, like it is with the Talon, with Felix. So I have no idea what that's going to end up being. The whether it is like a Lazarus Pit thing, and maybe they're tweaking the rules of the Lazarus Pit, or maybe that changes from who's ever writing said story. Because once again, it was never like, it's not like like you're forever with the it just resurrects you, but there is a longevity associated with it to some regards. So that I'm unsure the full rules behind the Lazarus Pit sometimes. So I don't know if that's going to be the pool that they ended up playing in this, because if so, does that mean the Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul? Because typically that's where Bruce gets his training from. It's the League of Shadows / League of Assassins. So you'd assume, but that could be something they tweet for this show, but it's like you'd assume that exists in this continuity somewhere. And like I said, I think in Gotham, the Al Ghul situation is tied to the Court of Owls, but I could be misremembering. It's been a while, so I could be totally misremembering that. And even if, even if that was the case, like, who's to say? I don't know if that's always across the board in the comics and stuff, and who knows even if that is, like I said, true in that Gotham continuity, doesn't mean it's true here. So either way, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all these plot points and elements take us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.